Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging right into chapter 2 of 2 Peter.
Hmm.
And this chapter, it really gets straight to a pretty crucial topic for you.
Yeah.
Understanding, maybe even identifying false teachers.
Right. What does this, ancient writing actually tell us about who they are, how they operate,
Hmm.
and what happens to them?
Yeah, and what's striking from the get-go is how the text just states it. These false teachers will be among you.
Just like they were before. It's presented almost as an inevitability.
And how do they work? It talks about them secretly introducing destructive heresies. That word secretly seems key.
It really does. It suggests subtlety, not always a full frontal assault on truth.
Hmm.
And maybe most shockingly, they're described as denying the sovereign Lord.
Wow,
I'm not kidding.
that goes beyond just being mistaken.
Oh, absolutely. It's framed as a fundamental betrayal. And the text is blunt. It brings swift destruction on them.
A heavy consequence.
Yeah.
But it's not only about their fate, is it? The text warns that many will follow their shameful ways.
Yeah, that's the really worrying part for the community, isn't it? The ripple effect.
And the result, it says their actions bring the way of truth into disrepute. So they actually damage the perception of truth itself.
Precisely. And the why behind it, the text is incredibly direct here.
Mm.
In their greed, it says, these teachers will exploit you with stories they have made up.
Greed, exploitation, made up stories. That paints a pretty clear picture of the motive and the method.
It really does.
Yeah.
And then the text pivots to underscore this point, showing how God has acted historically.
Yeah.
It uses these examples.
Right, like anchors in history. It says God didn't spare angels who sinned.
Sent them to dark dungeons, Tartarus, essentially awaiting judgment.
And then the ancient world, the flood.
Exactly. God brought the flood on the ungodly, but Noah, called a preacher of righteousness, him and 7 others, they were protected, saved.
So there's a clear contrast. Judgment here, rescue there.
And it continues with Sodom and Gomorrah. Condemned, burned to ashes. Serving as an example, it says, for future ungodly people.
But even in that judgment,
God rescued Lot, described as a righteous man, really distressed by the lawlessness he was constantly seeing and hearing.
okay, so these examples, they aren't just stories. They illustrate a principle,
Yeah.
right? A core message for you, the listener.
Absolutely. The conclusion drawn is explicit. The Lord knows how to rescue godly people from trials and to hold the unrighteous for the day of judgment. It asserts God's complete knowledge and power over both outcomes, rescue and reckoning.
Okay. So, secret operations, greed, denial of the Lord, facing judgment patterns seen in history. What else? How do they actually behave? The descriptions get quite vivid.
They really do. Following corrupt desires, despising authority, just a general contempt for order. Bold, arrogant.
And that bit about slandering celestial beings.
Yeah, contrast them with angels, who are stronger but apparently don't bring railing accusations.
Yeah.
It suggests these teachers are, well, reckless, operating on a lower level.
Blaspheming what they don't understand.
Right, like brute beasts, the text says, acting on instinct, kind of born for capture and destruction. It's harsh language.
Very harsh. What else characterizes them?
Their pleasure is carousing in broad daylight, so open shamelessness. They're called blots and blemishes, reveling in their own deceptions, even while, eating alongside believers.
Blending in while being corrupt.
Exactly. Eyes full of adultery, never stop sinning. And it repeats that point about greed. They're experts in greed.
It mentions Balaam, too, doesn't it?
Yes, the Old Testament prophet who went off track because he loved the wages of wickedness. His greed was so blinding, the story goes, he was rebuked by his own donkey.
A talking donkey. It really underscores the level of delusion.
Right, and these teachers are like that empty springs, mists driven by a storm. Promises, but no substance.
Yeah.
Black as darkness is reserved for them, it says.
Empty springs. That's a powerful image of deception. How do they draw people in, especially vulnerable ones?
They mouth empty, boastful words, apparently.
Right.
And they target people who are just escaping for those who live in error.
Ah, so people who are new may be unstable.
Seems so. They appeal to the lustful desires of sinful human nature, using fleshly desires, maybe dressed up as freedom, to entice them back.
Which brings us to that really sharp paradox the text points out.
Yes, this is crucial. They promise them freedom while they themselves are slaves of depravity.
For a man is a slave to whatever has mastered him. Wow.
Exactly. Promising liberty while being utterly controlled by their own corruption. That phrase, a man is a slave to whatever has mastered him, that's a huge key for discernment.
Definitely. And finally, the text addresses the really tragic situation of those who knew the truth, escaped corruption, but then get tangled up again.
It's a very sobering warning. If they knew Christ, escaped, but get entangled and overcome again,
Right.
they're worse off at the end than they were at the beginning.
Worse off than if they'd never known.
That's what it says. It would have been better for them not to have known the way of righteousness at all. It stresses the seriousness of turning back.
And it uses those two really blunt proverbs.
Yeah, very graphic. A dog returns to its vomit, and a sow that is washed goes back to her wallowing in the mud. It highlights this sort of reversion to a base nature.
So, pulling it together, this chapter of Second Peter gives you a really stark warning. Expect false teachers, know their characteristics, the secrecy, greed, immorality, and understand that God has a pattern of judgment and rescue.
And it underlines the danger for those who know the truth but turn away.
Hmm.
It's providing these vivid identifiers and outlining the consequences as a serious heads up for you.
Absolutely. And maybe as we finish, let's circle back to that incredibly potent line. A man is a slave to whatever has mastered him.
Such a powerful insight.
So here's something to think about. Reflecting on that principle, what does it tell you about how to spot the difference between genuine freedom and the kind of deceptive promises that might actually lead to bondage based on who or what is doing the promising? It's definitely something worth pondering.